We lost everything: our investment, our labor, and our time. When we tried to sell, the prices were so low, it wasn't even worth the effort, so we just discarded the harvest.
The government has done absolutely nothing for people here. It's just empty talk. They come down here with grand displays and make all these big, boastful promises, but it never amounts to anything.
Growing opium is now far less lucrative than it once was, but farmers in Shan State seeking to switch to other crops without help from the government or United Nations face many hurdles, including skyrocketing fertilizer costs and low market prices for their produce. Hello and welcome to Doh Athan, a weekly podcast from the Frontier family about human rights stories from Myanmar. This episode is produced by freelancer Shui Yi. It's the lunar month of Tabaung, the 12th and final month of the traditional Myanmar calendar, which falls in March and April. The weather in most of Myanmar this time of year can be relentless, hot, dry, and dusty. But in the Maenae mountain range in Shan State's Hopong Township, the air feels different. A few stray showers have recently passed through, leaving the peaks awash in bright, refreshing greenery. As we walk the trails, we're greeted by the delicate white blooms of monthly blooming flowers. The path gradually winds down into a valley, where a village is nestled amid vibrant green onion fields. At the edge of these fields lie tenepet, or cherut leaf, plantations, crops that locals have relied on for generations. Moving past them, we encounter sunflowers standing taller than a person, and then, hidden behind them, a parched field comes into view. This is the stark reality of the region: poppy fields now dry and withered after the recent harvest. Kun Tun Ang, 35, is a poppy farmer who lives in the area.
The traders only show up once in a while, and when they do, they arrive in a rush to weigh and buy the opium. There's no set schedule for which house they'll visit. They only stay for a brief moment, and the second we hear they've arrived, we have to hurry to sell to them. As soon as they're done, they disappear in a whirlwind of commotion. The market is quiet this year. Demand is cold, and buyers aren't really coming round yet. In fact, they haven't made it to this village at all.
Kun Tun Ang hasn't always farmed these mountain slopes. Not long ago, he lived a different life in the Shan capital of Taungji. But after the 2021 military coup, as the economy fractured and jobs became scarce, he made a heartbreaking decision. He left his 3 school-aged children with relatives to seek a living in the mountains, returning with his wife to his parents' village to work the land. But the land is offering few promises this year. Because the opium trade is illegal, there is no way to know when the traders will arrive. Even though the poppy pods have dried and the seeds have been harvested, the price of raw opium has plummeted, and the buyers are nowhere to be seen. For these farmers, this dire situation is reason enough to abandon poppy cultivation altogether. Kunpo Sain is another farmer in the Maenae Mountains.
Before we grew poppies, we relied on cherut leaves and onions. About 20 years ago, people switched because poppies fetched a much better price than any other crop. Back then, the value changed from year to year, but at its peak, opium was worth as much as gold. Now, that's no longer the case. The gap between them has become massive.
Understanding the history of farming in Shan State requires looking back to the late 19th century colonial era. At that time, rice, the primary staple, was grown on about 8.3 million acres throughout Myanmar. But new varieties of crops, such as coffee, wheat, maize, tomatoes, cabbage, and lettuce, were introduced to the country from England, Australia, the United States, India, and elsewhere. According to the book History of Myanmar Agriculture, these new crops were a perfect match for the soil and climate of Shan State. Because of their high quality and impressive yields, they were adopted as the primary cash crops, a tradition of cultivation that has been passed down through the generations. In some parts of Shan, however, the dream of farming these crops eventually faded. Locals in Yetsok, about 80 kilometers north of Hopong, explain that over 60 years ago, hard frost and other harsh weather made growing wheat nearly impossible. That, plus the ravages of pests and disease, and, more importantly, a volatile market with no guarantees, prompted farmers to turn to opium. Now the situation has shifted again. Farmers observe that with so many new types of drugs available, raw opium is no longer the primary ingredient for narcotics production. As a result, prices have crashed, and the traders who once flocked to these hills have stopped coming. Other challenges have emerged. The cost of fertilizer has soared due to import restrictions. Labor is scarce, and farmers must pay bribes to local authorities to be allowed to grow the crop. Farmer Kun Myint Tun said that because of these mounting pressures, farmers have been forced to diversify, planting other crops alongside or instead of poppies since 2021.
Opium has lost its value, while the cost of fertilizer has skyrocketed. Because it's an illegal crop, we face many hurdles just trying to sell it. But when coffee was introduced, the market price was excellent, finally allowing us to balance our daily living expenses. Seeing that opportunity, I made the decision on my own to switch my crops.
Despite the loss in value, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime reports that Myanmar has emerged as the world's primary source of heroin and the leading producer of opium since 2023. According to the UNODC, Myanmar has maintained its position as the top opium-producing country through 2025, with cultivation areas continuing to expand. Current data shows that opium poppy cultivation has reached over 132,000 acres, with a total yield of over 1,000 metric tons. While this represents an increase of nearly 4,800 acres in cultivation area compared to 2023, the year Myanmar became the top producer, the total production yield decreased by 70 tons during this period. To reduce opium production, the UNODC began supporting crop substitution programs as far back as 1980. By 2010, these efforts reached over 50 villages across the Maenae Mountains. The support included distributing high-quality coffee varieties, providing modern farming techniques, organizing farmers into cooperatives, and facilitating access to international markets. However, many farmers remain beyond the reach of such aid programs. Kun Myint Tun explained that those working independently to switch crops face a difficult road. Without institutional support, they struggle with low market prices, sometimes being forced to discard their harvests entirely when they can't find buyers.
There were times when we couldn't sell our onions and had to throw them away. It was even worse with ginger. We lost everything: our investment, our labor, and our time. When we tried to sell, the prices were so low, it wasn't even worth the effort, so we just discarded the harvest. It's the same with avocados now. We still need support and don't know where to sell them. We're stuck selling in Hopong, where we have to accept whatever low prices the brokers dictate. What we really want is the chance to export our produce to international markets.
Kun San Thain is a former employee with about 6 years of experience working at the UNODC. He pointed out that the success of crop substitution depends on the available land. For farmers who used to grow opium on small plots, it's not practical to switch to space-intensive crops like coffee, avocados, or elephant foot yams. Instead, Kun San Thain suggested introducing high-profit alternative income activities that can thrive in smaller spaces, alongside providing vocational training for other livelihoods. To achieve this, he emphasized that government operations and support systems must become more effective and impactful.
The government has done absolutely nothing for people here. It's just empty talk. They come down here with grand displays and make all these big, boastful promises, but it never amounts to anything. Compare that to what the UNODC does. They actually provide equipment, water systems, and tanks. Has the government ever offered that? I understand they have limits and can't help every village at once. But if they supported us with fertilizer and resources, the way the UNODC does, there is no reason we wouldn't succeed.
There are no public records of Department of Agriculture activities regarding opium substitution in the 5 years since the coup. But their last available report from 2019-2020 shows that 4 billion chats from the Union Fund were allocated to projects across 52 townships in Kachin, Kaya, Chin, and Shan states. The distribution included a wide range of crops, from staples like rice, pulses, oilseeds, and maize, to long-term crops like coffee, tea, rubber, and various fruits like dragon fruit, oranges, and mangoes. U Mong Myint, an official from the Department of Agriculture under the Shan State government, said poppy cultivation has become deeply ingrained as a traditional habit among local farmers. At the same time, he admitted that their crop substitution initiatives have yet to be implemented on a wide or effective scale.
It's not just poppy farmers. You can simply tell any farmer, even those growing maize, to stop just because prices are low. It's about their habits. A poppy farmer feels a sense of comfort. Even when the market for maize fails, they stick with what they know. They have the skills for it, and they have a deep-seated attachment to growing it. When it comes to opium substitution, the government has a wide range of programs involving many departments, from psychological support to alternative crops and livestock. But if I'm being completely honest about our department's work, we are currently only at the model farm stage. We haven't reached a point where we can represent the industry as a whole.
Kun San Thain, the former UNODC staffer, disagreed.
It's very simple. There are so many farmers still growing poppy today. But if they owned a coffee plantation and had enough land to earn a good income, they wouldn't touch poppy. They do it because they have no other choice. Poppy is a short-season crop. You can eat and survive off of it in just 3 months. If you plant something else, you can't harvest that quickly. They only grow it because it brings in fast cash. No matter how hard or exhausting it is, or even if the government bans it, they'll still grow it in secret. It all comes down to income.
While Myanmar has faced intense domestic and international criticism for becoming the world's top opium producer, there is a stark lack of effective support for the farmers who are ready to change. Without a systematic plan to develop stable markets for alternative crops, it is impossible for these farmers to abandon opium for good. As long as this gap remains, the poppy fields will continue to haunt the landscape. Kun Tun Ong, for example, tried to transition his farm to substitute crops. But without any market knowledge or buyers, he faced nothing but financial loss. Because of this, he feels he has no choice but to return to poppy cultivation this November. He plans to grow avocados, coffee, and elephant foot yams during the off-season. But his heart remains heavy with worry about whether he will have a market to sell them.
I think we're just going to end up right back where we started. I keep wondering if opium prices will recover next year, or if this situation will just repeat itself. If it does, I'll have to plant corn and then go back to opium. Other crops just aren't a viable option alongside corn anymore, and even if I harvested the corn early to plant something like beans, I wouldn't know who would buy them or where I would go to sell them. I just don't have the answers.
Thanks for listening to this edition to Doh Athan. We welcome your feedback on social media, and please follow or subscribe to our pages. You can listen to our podcasts via the Doh Athan Facebook page. They can also be found on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Telegram, and Instagram. Please tune in again next week.